Okay, I'm going to call to order the July 18 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. First item on our agenda is roll call.
Commissioner Height. Commissioner Poland.
Here.
Commissioner Shernick.
Here.
Commissioner Flake. Councilmember Rodriguez.
All right. Any communications from Planning Manager Don Burchett?
Chairman Shernick, there's 3 items, well, actually 4 items at your dais tonight. We had a couple of correspondence turned in after the packet went out regarding the item that's on your agenda tonight, as well as a letter from Stand With Our St. Vrain Creek that was submitted by Ms. Bowman and asked to be given to the Planning Commission today for more information regarding some of their concerns that they've had in general with some of our development standards. So just passing those on to you. And then the last item is the alternative parking plan for the project tonight that was handed out by Transportation Planner Phil Greenwald.
Thank you very much. Jane, just for the record, Commissioner Teta joined us at 7:02 p.m. He is here. Okay. Next item is public invited to be heard. We do have some people who are signed up to speak about something that's not on tonight's agenda. That's what this section of the meeting is about. So we'll start with our list, and first is Sherry Malloy, if you'd like to come forward. So anybody else who's interested in doing this, you come forward, you state your name and address for the record, and you get 5 minutes. At the red light, I kindly get you to stop. Okay. Please press a button so your microphone starts. There you go. Great.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sherry Malloy. I live at 2113 Rangeview Lane here in Longmont. Lived here since 1986. So Jamie and I will be tag teaming on this. We just wanted to bring, it's the letter that was just mentioned with Stand With Our St. Vrain Creek. We're representatives of a group of people who are concerned about doing development right along our St. Vrain corridor. So we had several other organizations that have kind of joined forces with us and submitted a letter to City Council last April 1st actually, and just thought we should bring this to your attention. So we're just going to read the letter tonight and not take up a lot of your time. So I'm going to read the first half and then Jamie will take the second half. So this says, regarding enacting stronger riparian protection laws. Mayor Bagley and council members, as the city of Longmont shifts its focus from development opportunities on the city margins to infill or redevelopment, the intrusion of urban development into riparian, related to, which is defined as related to or situated on the banks of a river or other body of water, areas will intensify. Riparian areas serve a number of important functions such as filtering runoff, slowing down floodwaters, and preventing erosion. In addition, while riparian areas are estimated to make up less than 2% of the area of Colorado, over 70%, it's more like 90%, of species in the state depend on riparian areas at some point in their lives. The current update of the Longmont Land Development Code provides a timely opportunity for City Council to enact significant improvements to its regulations concerning the protection of Longmont's rivers, streams, wetlands, and riparian areas, as well as wildlife and wildlife habitat within the city. Stand With Our St. Vrain Creek and the signatories of this letter respectfully request the following be included in the Land Development Code updates in order to protect our creeks, stream, lakes, and reservoirs, such as St. Vrain Creek and Union Reservoir. So then we have 7 criteria. Number 1, the criteria for granting a variance for a reduced riparian setback are vague, ambiguous, and set a low bar for developers to obtain city approval to build within the 150-foot riparian conservation buffer. The criteria as written currently require a variance request to be consistent with the developer's proposal, but do not require that it be consistent with city plans to restore habitat for wildlife, aquatic species, and pollinators on St. Vrain Creek after flood mitigation efforts are completed. The criteria should be rewritten to eliminate loopholes and provide more stringent requirements that will effectively protect riparian habitat and movement corridors. Number 2, artificial lighting should be prohibited along Longmont's greenways, open space properties, and riparian corridors in order to protect nocturnal wildlife and maintain the ecological integrity of wildlife movement corridors. Wildlife moves at night. Number 3, light fixture shielding and vegetation buffer requirements should be established to minimize the impacts of light and noise pollution from nearby development on greenways, open spaces, and riparian corridors. This is especially important along the St. Vrain, where the removal of vegetation has eliminated an important natural screen and sound dampener. And so Jamie's going to take it from here.
Thank you, Ms. Malloy.
Do they have copies? I brought copies.
Yes.
I have them. Thank you.
Jamie Simo.
Jamie Simo, 525 East 16th Avenue. I'm just going to continue on. Number 4, building heights should be restricted for structures built adjacent to riparian areas in order to keep the scale and profile of buildings from overpowering the natural setting of stream corridors. Number 5, the amount of impervious materials, for example, concrete sidewalks and parking lots, used in a development adjacent to rivers, streams, and other bodies of water should be kept to a small percentage of the overall area of the development. Impervious surfaces prevent infiltration of rain and snow melt into the ground, resulting in polluted stormwater runoff draining into waterways. Number 6, the Planning and Development Services Director, not the development applicant, should retain a consultant with demonstrated expertise in the field to prepare the required habitat species conservation report for a development proposal. The applicant will reimburse the city for the cost of preparing the plan. And number 7, the city should acquire wildlife habitat adjacent to the riparian conservation buffer as open space or as a wildlife habitat dedication in an annexation agreement to protect important wildlife habitat, including prairie dog habitat located outside the 150-foot buffer, but contiguous with habitat within the buffer zone. Riparian areas are highly valued habitat in terms of species richness and the high number of endangered, threatened, and special concern species present there. It is imperative that City Council be proactive and take immediate action to ensure the protection of these areas now and for future habitat restoration efforts by implementing stronger regulations and honoring the intent of the current 150-foot riparian setback requirement. Thank you for your time and the consideration you will give to this matter. Respectfully yours, and this is endorsed by the following. Sherry and I, our colleague Ruby Bowman, and the following other organizations: Boulder Rights of Nature, Boulder County Audubon Society, Colorado River Rights of Nature, Dark Sky Association Colorado Section, Endangered Species Coalition, Foothills Audubon Club, Front Range Nesting Bald Eagle Studies, Prairie Protection Colorado, Save Our St. Vrain Valley, Save Union Reservoir, Sierra Club Colorado Chapter, Tindacon, and Wild Earth Guardians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Simo. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to come forward and speak about something that's not on tonight's agenda at this time? Seeing no one, we will close the public invited to be heard. Next on our agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from June 20th, 2018 first. Commissioner Poland.
I move that we approve the June 20th, 2018 minutes.
Okay, any discussion or a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Teta seconds. So let's do this by voice approval. All those in favor who are present at the meeting say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Commissioner Height abstains. Okay, let's move on to the June 27th, 2018 minutes. Commissioner Poland.
On page 8 for item number 6, at the end it says motion seconded by Commissioner with no Commissioner noted.
Okay,
And truthfully, I don't remember who seconded that motion, but I just want to point that out.
so should we can approve just with it being corrected later? Okay, all right. So we can approve with it being corrected later.
Then I will move that we approve the June 27, 2018 minutes with the addition of whoever was the commissioner who seconded the motion.
Okay. Do we have a second or discussion of this item? I'll second the motion to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, so that passes unanimously. So we have approved the June 27th minutes. Commissioner Goldberg has just arrived, and he is being seated at 7:10 p.m. Due to bad traffic on I-25, we all know what that's like. Glad you're here safely. Next on our agenda is item number 6, the well conditional use and site plan, Sola Community Church, PZR 2018-11, with planning technician Ian Colby.
Thank you, Chairman Shernick, Commissioners, Councilmember Rodriguez. Tonight before you is the conditional use application for the well at 470 Main Street. 470 Main Street is a designated local landmark and a zoned central business district. Now, because the last time this structure was used as a church was back in the early 1970s, the well has to reestablish the religious assembly use on the property. This presentation is meant to go over some of the issues staff found during the review process and kind of show how they've been adequately addressed by the applicant or by what exists in the area. The first one is the conditional use itself. Our code requires that we evaluate each conditional use in the context of the zone in which it's going. Specifically, this religious assembly use has a special standard that says that we have to evaluate the real estate supply in the area and make sure that this new religious assembly use is not going to crowd out the permitted uses that the zone was intended for. In this case, the central business district is meant for a high-intensity mix of offices, retail, restaurant, services, government functions, etc. In this case, though, we felt that the new religious assembly use would not crowd out those uses. The building is already designed to be a church and has since the 1800s, and the landmark status actually prevents the ability to redevelop the site into something else. This is not going to be Class A office space anytime soon. The next issue that came up was the accessibility for the structure. The change in occupancy of the building triggered the building code requirement that they had to provide at least one accessible entrance. Now, there were two issues with this. First was actually providing the accessible entrance. Again, it was built in the 1800s. They didn't have a lot of accessibility standards back then. And so in this case, the applicant mitigated that concern by proposing to put in a code-compliant and landmark conforming ramp. They proposed a stamped concrete that would match the existing structure. The other issue that came up is that this area where the step is not actually the St. Vrain Historical Society's property. It's the Longmont Downtown Development Authority's property. But through research, we were able to find that there's an existing access easement on this area of land so they can use it for access purposes, and that's actually shown on the next slide here. The last issue and the largest public response we got was regarding parking. At least in our current code, a place of religious assembly requires that there be at least one parking space for every 4 occupants off-street, so on-street parking doesn't count. The church, like the rest of the downtown, however, would not want to satisfy these requirements on their own property. This survey also shows that the property lines are pretty tight around the church, and providing parking off-street on the property would be infeasible. However, again, like the rest of the district, they're allowed to use the General Improvement District parking lots. That is why the GID was set up in the early 1960s to satisfy those parking requirements off-street without requiring each property owner to provide it individually. In this case, staff not only looked at the data of Phil will be able to talk about this a little bit more if you are inquiring, but the data that we have shows that, and the direct observations of staff indicate that the parking lots near the church are usually no more than half full at the time. 25 parking spots could easily be absorbed by those parking lots without necessarily causing undue impact on the adjacent properties or neighborhoods. With those items addressed, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use site plan for the well with the condition that they satisfy any plan corrections or other issues that may come up in the follow-up.
Thank you, Ian. Do we have a presentation by the applicant? Great, let's go to that.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Philip Woods, and I'm the founding and lead pastor of The Well. And I really don't have much of a presentation other than just to say that our intent with the property is to use it for Sunday morning worship services. I'll office there during the week, and as well as probably use it for periodic gatherings throughout the week. In this process, we feel like we've fulfilled all of the requirements that we've had from the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as the Historical Preservation Commission. So I'm just really here to see if you have any questions in regards to the application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Woods. Any clarifying questions at this time for either Ian or Mr. Woods before we go to the public? Seeing none, this is a public hearing item, so we'd like to hear from anybody who's in the audience. Nobody has signed up on a sign-up sheet, but if anybody is here who'd like to come forward and speak about this item, please do so now. Seeing nobody getting out of their chairs, we will close the public hearing and we will go to discussion and questions from the commission. Commissioner Flagg.
Thank you. I have a question for, I see our traffic people are not here, but maybe they're not the right people. So my question is in regards to the Xfinity truck parking that was mentioned in one of the letters that we reviewed as part of our information prior to tonight's meeting. And I think it's my recollection that we require that a commercial venture park its trucks on site rather than to park in a residential area. And so I guess I'm wondering what steps should be or can be or maybe have been attempted to remedy that situation in the neighborhood?
A great question. My name is Phil Greenwald, Transportation Planner with the city's Planning and Development Services Division or Department. Chairman Shernick, Commissioner Flagg, the question before us is regarding the Xfinity trucks, and back when that was Comcast, and I think it still is partially Comcast, that business located in what was known as the GID, the General Improvement District, which is still there, and any business that located within the GID, that General Improvement District, more than 4 years ago was not subject to any parking standards, and still actually a non-residential use would not be subject to parking minimums. So that business would be exempt in either case for providing parking specifically for those vehicles.
My follow-up question then would be, but isn't there a requirement that businesses not park their trucks in a residential neighborhood area?
I believe the code does have an indication about commercial vehicles in residential parked long-term, but again, that area is in the GID, or was in the GID when it was approved. And so anything on street in the non-residential in the CBD district, as Ian mentioned, would be considered that mixed use non-residential piece.
And so what are the boundaries to that, if you wouldn't mind explaining?
Chairman Shernick and Commissioner Flagg, if you look at the map, it's kind of a smaller map on the top there, and you look at the solid black line, that's the General Improvement District boundary. So it includes all of Kimbark, south of that is 8th Avenue. Oh no, that's Longs Peak, and it goes all the way out to the alley between Emory and Kimbark on the east side.
Any other thoughts, questions, discussion? Seems to me that in terms of the parking issue, I mean, we got some feedback from various members of the community in our packet, and there is a concern about parking going into the east side neighborhood. One thing I was wondering, and this would be a question for you, Phil, is why do we not get complaints or comments from the west side historic neighborhood? What is there something that the city knows about that I can't suss out that causes that difference?
Chairman Shernick, I really can't answer that question. I don't have a good answer for that question. There have been issues for both sides. I've heard from the west side historic neighborhood on a few issues when there was ironically a church located just across the street at 6th and Kaufman. The church was located right across from the Boulder County Center. So we did get a lot of complaints at that time that there were teachers parking in the neighborhoods and taking spaces in front of people's homes. Obviously, that's public right-of-way, so that's another issue, is that we're having a difficult time kind of reconciling with folks, as people always consider that space in front of their house as theirs, but it's really public. It's ours. And so we have worked with the East Side neighborhood on quite a few occasions. They did tell us that they have a shortage in parking. The LDDA did a whole parking study for the west and east side. I mean, everything that was in that map that includes the LDDA, which is the larger dashed line boundary. They did a parking study and found that we really have more of a walking problem than a parking problem. So it's really more about, there's enough spaces in and around downtown, but it's where people you know how it is when you come downtown. There's certain places where people want to park. And we did reach out to the East Side neighborhood, the historic East Side neighborhood, and we tried to, with this study, one of the recommendations was to increase the parking by getting rid of some parallel parking and adding some diagonal parking. And we really wanted to do reverse in diagonal parking, or back in diagonal parking. You'll see this in Boulder and Fort Collins. It's much better for bicyclists going by the front so you can see people. And there was a huge backlash, quite frankly, from the historic East Side about adding the parking. And it was interesting to us that we had heard complaints that they needed more, that there was more parking demand in that area. And when we tried to provide that, we were rebuffed quite a bit, actually, that there was no change desired at that time. So we went back and we've tried to listen. We've tried to actively listen. I know there's some comments about us not being very proactive or progressive about this parking situation, but we really have tried to be, and there's no solution yet.
So I've been pondering this since we got our packet, and one thought came to my mind, and it's partly because of a comment that was made by one of the residents on the east side. How his house has no alleyway, he has no garage, he has no driveway. He parks on the street, and I thought, oh, right, their neighborhood was designed before the advent of the automobile. Our planning code, we established our first planning code in 1940. Okay, so here we are taking a much more modern tool called planning and trying to apply that to a neighborhood that was designed before automobiles were even a concept. So maybe there's always going to be a disconnect for that neighborhood with the tool that we have at hand, which is called planning. Maybe we can't entirely fix it unless that neighborhood is willing to build garages and driveways and to put alleyways through. I mean, to actually have the neighborhood come up to a design that we now consider modern and accommodates the automobile. So I'm thinking, given that, and if I'm even close to the mark on that, that there is no solution for parking. And from reading the analysis by planning technician Colby, I think that the impact that parking from this project would have on the area, because it's at different times of the normal business week and different times of the day, it's in effect off from the usual peak times, and it's also been observed by city staff. I think parking is basically, by this project, would be impacted the least from any other possible use. Commissioner Height.
Thank you. I'm talking loudly into my microphone. Planner Greenwald, Planner Colby, Mr. Woods, we received on our dais an alternative parking plan proposal that I think, Phil, you had handed out. What is that? What's it meant to do? I think it came from you, Mr. Woods. Did you put that together? Okay. So can we get an explanation? Thanks.
Chairman Sherman, Commissioner Height, that is a tool we have in our land development code in the parking section for just these very types of applicants that will come in and can prove to us that there's a different level of parking or different parking need at a site. So we are, we require this when somebody can't meet the parking requirements. We ask for an alternative parking plan to show how and why that's possible. So the pastor did put this together as far as the alternative parking plan. We went through it and asked for some corrections, and he made those. So we arrived at this, and this kind of just alludes to the fact that there might be some additional parking spaces provided at the daycare, the Aspen Daycare Center, that's just to the east of the church. And evidently in the packet, reading it as it came together last week, there are 13 spaces that are provided to the church from Aspen Daycare, evidently. So that's something that's not specifically called out in the alternative parking plan, but we do use these when people, either if they have to go over the maximums or if they can't meet the minimums, and so that's where we're at today.
So for my clarification, or just to put it into my head correctly, is this a plan that the city's comfortable with?
Chair and Commissioner Height, yes, we approved this plan. We tried to spell that out in the communication to you that we did. The applicant has submitted an alternative parking plan, and we want to be clear that we did approve that.
Okay, and that plan, just again, so I understand what it is, identifies that there are other public parking spaces as well as street parking spaces in and around the GID, the General Improvement District, that the church can take advantage of for its congregants to park in. Okay, and Mr. Woods, just so I'm clear, or Pastor Woods, just so I'm clear, you're comfortable that your congregants can find adequate parking? I think it'd probably be helpful, yeah.
Yes, after I actually spent some time down there on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock is our proposed time for our services, and took photos and looked around, and it seemed like there was adequate public parking available.
Okay. So I guess my conversation with my fellow commissioners, thank you, sir, would be that it appears that parking needs have been satisfied with what's available in the GID, what's available in public parking nearby. That seems to meet both the city's requirements as well as the applicant's requirements, which was kind of the only concern that I was gleaning coming out of some of the comments from this package. And with that, I think I'm going to be able to approve this application.
Commissioner Poland.
Pastor Woods, real quickly, you had mentioned there might be some after-hour weekday items that may occur at your place. Can you just real quickly go over what those might be?
Yeah, so at this point, we're just starting, and so we don't have anything set in stone. I wanted to be upfront with anything possible that we could be having. That could be a Bible study that meets there. That would be a small group of people. There possibly maybe we might have a midweek service in the evening. What that would be, though, my intention would be Sunday evening through Thursday evening, avoid Friday and Saturday. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Goldberg.
Mr. Woods. Sorry. You never know. I could just wait for you to sit down and then back up. Thank you for being here. Yeah. A couple of quick questions that I'd just like to hear on the record. It looks like in the agreement with the Historical Society, you identify that you have no plans of being a soup kitchen or providing services for our transient community. Why?
Yeah, and actually the Historical Society is asking us not to, and that'll be a part of our contract, some of the expressed concerns of the neighbors of the businesses in the downtown area have expressed concerns that they're worried about a church drawing more homeless, more transient to the area. And so really, that's part of the answer. And the other part is we're a startup church with a limited budget and a limited amount of people, resources. It's not even practical for us to do that. A more practical way for us to care for, obviously we're a church, we want to care for people. A more practical way for us to care for people is to partner with those organizations already in existence in our community.
Great. Yeah, it's true. The downtown business owners are, very concerned about the impact of the transient community downtown, homelessness being a big factor. And I was just wondering what you might be doing to, prevent waving this flag in the air that says, "Hey, we're a church, and here's where we come to receive services." I, of course, love and support any organization providing those services, but our downtown business communities, really at odds with that. Yeah.
Well, our Sunday morning worship services are going to be open to anybody who wants to come, and so we will not profile based on any direction for that and attendance on that. During the week, really probably won't be an open door that anybody can just come in, but really it'll be more of a talking to an individual, caring for them, and then trying to point them. Longmont just came out with, was it Longmont Advocates? Or they're downtown, they're patrolling downtown where they're pointing transient populations in certain directions towards the services that are available in our community. And that's essentially, other than a spiritual side where I'd probably take some time to pray for them and to speak with them more, but I'd be pointing them into the same direction as the services available in our community.
Will services will funerals be, and funeral services take place at your church?
Yeah, I imagine if those are needs of our congregants, yes.
I didn't know if those happen during the normal church hours, or are those opportunities or occasions where we might see an unusual amount of traffic?
Yeah, those would be at different times during the week, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Poland.
Well, here are my thoughts on this. I do believe that this is an appropriate use for that area, considering that it was built to be a church originally, but also because it really, to me, it appears that it'll have, compared to what else could potentially go there, it does not have a big impact on the area. Also, I do believe the Historical Society has mentioned that they had been trying to make use of this, and some of the other places, some of the other opportunities did not seem to fit as well for this area. So I applaud you on going there, and I do believe that it is a good fit for that area. I do find that since this is a landmark area, that they have met the conditions with the additions that need to be made, and they have gotten the appropriate certificates for that. Also, for the review criteria, the application is consistent with the LACP as amended, conforms to any previous approved concept plans, preliminary plats, or PUDs, and complies with all applicable statutes, codes, ordinances, and regulations. I find that is true. The application complies with applicable design standards and construction specifications, including for street and utility design and layouts, and adequate utilities are available for the appropriate urban level services. I find that is true. C, the application is consistent with the intent and purposes of the zone and proposes development compatible with neighboring, existing, and approved developments in terms of land use, layout, site design, and access. I do find that is true. D, the application will not significantly adversely affect our own properties, the natural environment, existing or planned city transportation or utility services, facilities, or the impacts will be mitigated to the extent feasibly possible considering existing plans. The big one for that was the parking, and along with Commissioner Height, I do believe that they have taken the proper steps for this. They have worked with their neighbors to identify some additional spaces, and the fact that most of their activity will be Sunday morning when the downtown area does see its least use, so I do find that is met. And E, the application includes an appropriate transportation plan, including multimodal transportation access, and is integrated and connected where appropriate with adjacent development through street connection, sidewalk trails, and similar features. You did also note that the bus does have a drop-off right by there, so I believe that is all met. Given that, I am going to move that we approve PZR 2018 11B with the one condition: the applicant shall satisfy all requirements of the DRC prior to final approval of the conditional use site plan.
Commissioner Flake.
I second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve PZR 2018-11B. It's been seconded by Commissioner Flake. Commissioner Goldberg.
I just want to put in my 2 cents. It's like my first time here. For all of the reasons so eloquently dictated by Commissioner Poland, and certainly for Commissioner Height's argument about the parking concerns being addressed, I too will be supportive. I also applaud any organization or new business that works hand in hand with the Historical Society. I think that's a sign of maybe things to come, a sign of a good partnership that's good for our town. I do think that you will have a challenge to balance providing the services that you inspire, that you create by being a church, and balancing that with addressing the services of the transient community. I know you have a plan, and I look forward to seeing that not become a problem in that, very relevant and very important downtown community. So I'll be supportive.
Okay, I have a note from Jane that there's a technical problem in terms of taking a vote. So we won't be using our little buttons on our dais. But first, let me just double check. Did anybody else want to make any comments? Okay, so we'll go to a vote on the motion to approve PZR 2018-11B. I'll need to do it by voice vote, and of course we need to know who votes which way. So we'll start with Commissioner Height. What would be your vote, sir? Yes from Commissioner Height. Commissioner Teta? Yes. Yes from Commissioner Teta. Commissioner Poland?
Yes.
Commissioner Poland votes yes. I will vote yes. Commissioner Goldberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg is yes. Commissioner Flake? Yes from Commissioner Flake. So that passes unanimously 6-0. This item now enters a 7-day appeal period. During this time, any aggrieved party may appeal the Commission's decision by submitting a written appeal letter stating why the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision should be amended or reversed by City Council. All appeals must be in writing and must be received in the City Clerk's office and the Planning Office within the 7-day appeal period, which begins Thursday, July 19 at 8 a.m. and ends Thursday, July 25 at 5 p.m. Mr. Woods, thank you very much for being here and walking us through and answering our questions. Planner Technician Colby and Phil Greenwald, thank you very much for helping us with all the technicalities. Appreciate that. Let me get back to my agenda. And next item is the final call, public invited to be heard. If there's anybody in the audience who'd like to speak about something that was not on tonight's agenda, now would be the time to do so. So please come forward. Seeing no one, we'll close the public invited to be heard. Items from the commission. Anyone? I think I would just like to suggest to our council member, Mr. Rodriguez, that the points that were made by the members from Save Our St. Vrain are very good. Apparently they've already been presented to City Council, but I certainly, personally, I can't speak for the commission, but I personally would be in favor of some of their points being incorporated into our code. So let's see, any other comments from the commission? Okay. Any items from the council representative Rodriguez?
As always, thank you, commissioners, for your service. I will convey at least your personal thoughts, Chairman Schernick, to the City Council in our work session coming up this Friday morning. So thank you, guys.
Great. Yeah, for what it's worth. Any items from Planning Manager Don Burchett?
Chairman Schernick, members of the commission, just an update. We're reaching a major milestone. Next Tuesday will be the first reading of the adoption of the Land Development Code for the update. And then the public hearing and second reading is scheduled for August 14th. So I just wanted to give you an update and thank you again for all the work that you put into the product that we have. So we appreciate that.
And Don, just to follow up, does it look like we have an August meeting?
Right now, I have to double check, but I canceled everything in our scheduling ability right now. So right now you do not have a meeting for August.
Wow.
We'll confirm the end of this week, but right now I would say that you will not have any.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Unless anybody's opposed, we will adjourn. Thank you.